The Mido Decompression Timer 1962 Limited Edition is a watch that simply exists to make us happy. It has many great functions, such as the famous decompression timer dial, a rotating bezel, and even timekeeping functionality of sorts. It would be incredibly easy to simply dismiss a watch like this. After all, you will struggle enormously to tell the time, you will never actually use the decompression diagram, and the bezel is so difficult to grip regardless of the conditions that you'll likely just leave it alone. So for me, this watch is best appreciated through an analogy. This is my dog, Maisie. She is beautiful, and seeing her face every day just makes me smile. I mean, look at those gorgeous eyes and flappy ears. You can just tell that she loves being alive in a world where all the humans love her, and she just wants to hang out with you every day. This Mido watch is the same. That dial, you see it and it makes you smile. The colors, if you get up on a grey, depressing Monday morning and strap this to your wrist, it will be absolutely impossible to not smile. If you travel on public transport or go into an office with other people that don't want to be there, again, you'll be bringing sunshine and happiness with you like it's gone out of fashion, which you could argue that it has. You will be a veritable walking anti-depression factory, and nothing can stop you from painting the world in pink, green, blue and yellow. And you haven't even showed them the happy strolling sea star on its back yet. So knowing all this, we still have to talk about some of the technical aspects of this watch. I do hope you'll join me. I know everyone on YouTube goes on about this, but the stark reality is that the more subscribers you have, the more brands are happy to lend you their watches. So do please consider a like and subscribe, I would really appreciate it. It's almost impossible to not start with this incredible dial, so let's do that. What's the story with these colors, numbers and stuff? The watch is based on a model that was produced from 1961 to 1965, which by the way explains the limited numbers of 1961 of this watch. What is immediately obvious is that there were no dive computers in those days, so a decompression diagram was a must if you didn't want to risk the bends. Diving then, as is still the case today, is a very clear reminder that human bodies are fragile and you take your own life into your very own hands when you venture into the deep. The details sitting at the 12 o'clock position were white on black on the original watch, and hence slightly easier to read. But the scale remains the same and you'll be able to see both feet and meters. So if you move the bezel to follow your minute hand at the depth you'll dive down to, the corresponding circle will tell you how long your decompression time will be and help your controlled descent back to the surface. Whilst this is all very colourful on land, all colours disappear just a few meters down underwater, so the diagram will be easier or harder depending on your viewpoint, just a few meters down. Incidentally, this is one of my biggest revelations taking my diver certificate back in the day. The Great Barrier Reef is very colourful on photos, but descending just a few meters will have you see only different shades of blue. If you're one of these people that have always dreamt about seeing the vivid colours of coral reefs and its inhabitants, I highly recommend snorkeling since you'll see more colours. Within the circle we find a watch function, handy feature on a wristwatch some say. This small circle is very small, but visible enough I suppose. The main issue here is with legibility, as the polished hands disappear against the light background, so it is a bit of a challenge to work out what the time actually is. Again, it's tempting to complain about that, but I refer you again to the start of this video. You are not wearing this watch since your life depends on knowing what the exact time is at a casual 0.5 second glance at your wrist. You are wearing it to bring sunshine and happiness to your fellow man. And on that basis, it's not in the spirit of things to mention that you need a very precise angle, light, and potentially glasses to work out what the time is. So I won't do that. There's also a date complication at the 3 position, the shape of which is perfectly integrated into the design of the dial. The black and white is actually quite easy to read, and I think it's impressive that they managed to design a date complication that doesn't detract from such a colourful watch face. Covering all this groovy happiness is a lovely vintage style sapphire crystal. It's a vintage in design only, with that gorgeous distortion you get from rounded edges on an angle. Being sapphire here, you won't have to worry about scratches. No, those worries will be reserved for the high polished case, but more on that later. The turquoise blue bezel is a perfect color choice. Depending on the light, it can be a light summery early evening shade or a darker pre-dawn blue. It's an aluminium insert with the only protrusion being a prominent lume pip at the 12 position. This is by far the most visible lume detail on the entire watch. If there is one thing to complain about, it's the feel of the bezel. The only way to get a proper grip is by holding it at the 12 and 6 position. And even then, you will have to be very firm. I'm assuming that the very light knurling is period specific. But studying the granddad of the watch, that seemed to be far more like the Halios Seaforth watches of today with a metal grippy ring, which would have been easier to use. But you're only going to play with this bezel when you're bored anyway, so does it matter? Probably not. The case itself is a high polish all over affair. It looks great, but it will obviously attract fingerprints and scratches. Being a period inspired piece, that is as it should be in my opinion. But if you're a collector that hates scratches, this is simply not for you, unless you want to wrap it up in plastic, grandparents' couch style. Don't do that please. The crown is large and easy to manipulate, despite some very prominent crown guards. It's also signed, which is a nice touch. Moving to the back of the watch, we'll find the usual spec sheet, and I guess one of the most impressive ones is the 20 ATM or 200 meter water resistance. But really all you're going to see here is that beautiful starfish. I love the look of it, since depending on the angle, it can look like it's walking, waving or jumping. It's a beautiful design and I like it very much. Mido is part of the Swatch group and therefore gets access to ETA's Elaboré grade movement, with no less than 80 hours of power reserve. That is genuinely practical, and you can leave your watch off your wrist for a few days, pick it back up and it'll still be ticking away. The watch is delivered with a quality Milanese style bracelet, but you also get a great blue fabric strap and a brown leather strap, all with signed buckles. I think this Milanese style bracelet is just ideal on this watch. It suits it perfectly and also has the added bonus of quick release spring bars, so despite no drilled lugs present here, it'll still be a risk-free affair to change bracelets. It's also quite thick and feels well made, almost chainmail-like in its approach. I don't really get into these styles of bracelets normally, but this one is a home run. To be perfectly honest, I find the look of Mido's contemporary watches quite boring, and the contrast between this watch and some of their newer offerings is vast. The Mido Ocean Star, nicknamed Rainbow, is just so much fun. Whilst it may look on pictures like it was designed by either a clown or a very eccentric dive master or a combination of both, it's absolutely spot on in person, and I'd take this white dial over the black one any day. It's colourful, but with a purpose. And if some poor person asks you about that fancy dial, you can bore them to tears about how the diving diagram works and how cleverly colour-coded it all is. I mean, honestly, you'll be the biggest hit at dinner parties. If you see one for sale or even have the opportunity to try it on, then just do it and buy one. It is your duty to bring more colour and happiness to this world, and I commend you for it in advance. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you next time.